The alert came in quietly at first, just another line of data scrolling across the deep space monitoring screens. At that distance, space was usually empty and boring, filled with dust, weak radiation, and the slow movement of dead rocks. The operators almost ignored it. But then the system flagged the object again. And again. The mass was wrong. The energy readings were wrong. The object was too large, too dense, and far too structured to be natural. Within minutes, the room grew tense. Long-range scanners focused fully on the unknown shape drifting near the edge of a neutral star system. At first glance, it looked like a shadow against the stars, barely moving, as if it had been sleeping for a very long time. But the more the scanners adjusted, the clearer it became. This was no asteroid. This was a vessel that the numbers on the screen made experienced analysts go silent. The environmental residue clinging to the hull told a frightening story. Extreme gravity stress, radiation scarring far beyond normal exposure, molecular damage consistent with pressure levels that could crush most known ships instantly. The automated system processed all this and produced a classification that almost no one had ever seen appear on a live scan. Class-15 Deathworld origin. The words felt unreal. Class-15 worlds were not just dangerous, they were nightmares. Planets where storms could tear mountains apart, where gravity broke bones, where the atmosphere itself could kill within seconds. Even unmanned probes rarely survived long in such places. Civilizations were not supposed to come from there. Ships were never meant to operate after being exposed to those conditions. And yet, the object on the scanners carried that signature as if it had lived in it. News spread fast through secured channels. Nearby fleets were ordered to halt all movement and maintain maximum distance. No one wanted to be the first to provoke something born from a Class-15 environment. Fear spread not because the vessel was attacking, but because it was simply there, existing in defiance of everything the galaxy believed about survival. As more data poured in, the mystery deepened. The vessel's shape was unfamiliar, but not alien in the way most unknown ships were. Its structure followed a kind of brutal logic. Thick armor layers overlapped like scars built upon older scars. There were no decorative curves, no signs of artistic design. Everything about it screamed function, survival, and endurance. It looked like something that had been broken many times and rebuilt each time to be harder than before. Then came the detail that changed everything. One of the archivists, cross-checking the hull geometry against ancient records, noticed a match. At first, they thought it was an error. The database was old, incomplete, and filled with forgotten designs from civilizations long gone. But the match appeared again and again, growing stronger as more parameters lined up. The internal frame layout, the reactor placement, the signature of its propulsion system. It was human. That conclusion caused arguments to erupt across command centers and research halls. Humanity was known, yes, but not like this. Humans were adaptable, aggressive when threatened, and stubborn beyond reason. But they were not supposed to have built something tied to a Class-15 Deathworld, especially not in the early days of their spacefaring history. Back then, they struggled with standard hostile environments. Many believed they relied too much on improvisation and luck, and yet the evidence refused to disappear. Ancient human exploration logs were pulled from sealed archives. Stories once dismissed as myths or exaggerations resurfaced. Early human crews who volunteered for extreme missions, test pilots who pushed experimental ships far beyond safety limits, the entire expeditions that vanished near uncharted systems and were quietly written off as tragic failures. The official explanation had always been simple. Humans were reckless, and sometimes recklessness ended badly. But now, looking at the silent vessel drifting through space, that explanation felt incomplete. The hull told a different story. It showed signs of long-term adaptation, not a single accident. The materials used were heavily modified, fused with compounds that only formed under unbearable pressure and heat. Repairs had been made again and again, each one improving the structure rather than restoring it to its original state. This ship had not just survived a Deathworld environment, it had been shaped by it. As the realization settled in, fear turned into unease. If humans had built this vessel long ago, then why had no one seen it before? Why had it gone silent for centuries? And most importantly, why was it appearing now? Some believed it was a ghost, a drifting tomb carrying the remains of a lost crew. Others argued it was a trap, an automated weapon designed to awaken under specific conditions. A few dared to suggest something far more unsettling, that the ship had never been lost at all, that it had simply been waiting. The scanners continued their work, peeling back layers of mystery. There were no active weapon signatures, no aggressive energy builds. The ship was quiet, controlled, almost patient. That, somehow, made it more frightening. Predators did not always rush. Some watched, some waited until the moment was right. When the final preliminary report was delivered, it ended with a single line that no one could ignore. According to interstellar law and ancient claims filed deep in galactic bureaucracy, the vessel's ownership was already registered. The claim was so old that most systems had forgotten it existed. Claimant humanity. The room fell silent. Humanity had marked this vessel as theirs long ago, fully expecting that one day, someone would find it. The fact that the galaxy was only discovering it now did not make it new. It only proved how patient humans had been. As fleets kept their distance and diplomats argued over what to do next, one truth became impossible to deny. This was not the arrival of something unknown. It was the return of something forgotten. And whatever purpose it had once served, it had survived places the galaxy refused to even name. The vessel continued to drift, calm and unmoving, as if unaware of the fear it had caused, or perhaps fully aware and simply unconcerned. The moment the possibility of human origin was confirmed, the mood across the galaxy shifted from fear to confusion. Fear could be managed. Confusion could not. Every major power began digging through its own records, desperate to understand how such a vessel could exist and why it had been forgotten for so long. The more they searched, the more uncomfortable the answers became. Humanity's early history in space was well documented, but it was also full of gaps. Those gaps had always been explained away as accidents, budget failures, or political cover-ups meant to protect a young species' reputation. Humans were known for testing limits, sometimes ignoring safety rules that other species treated as absolute law. In their early expansion years, humans often built ships quickly, modified them in the field, and sent crews into conditions that would have grounded any other civilization. At the time, this behavior was seen as reckless but harmless. Now it looked deliberate. Old testimonies were re-examined with new eyes. Reports from alien observers spoke of human engineers arguing not about how to avoid danger, but how much danger a system could handle before breaking. There were mentions of prototype vessels designed to operate under crushing gravity, extreme heat, and constant radiation. These projects were officially cancelled, their crews listed as missing or presumed dead. No wreckage was ever found. Until now, the vessel on the scanners matched too many of those abandoned concepts to be coincidence. Analysts noticed that its design philosophy was very different from modern warships. Instead of relying on shields alone, it combined layered armor, internal redundancy, and structural flexibility. If one system failed, another took over. If a section broke, the ship did not collapse. It adapted. It was built with the assumption that damage was not a possibility, but a certainty. That realization unsettled even the most hardened strategists. Most civilizations planned to avoid worst-case scenarios. Humans, it seemed, had planned to live inside them as more data came in. Scientists began reconstructing the ship's history through damage patterns. Certain sections of the hull had been compressed and reshaped in ways that only immense gravity could cause. Other areas showed chemical burns from atmospheres rich in corrosive compounds. These were not the marks of a single disaster. They were layers of experience, each one stacked on top of the last. The ship had gone somewhere terrible, survived, changed, and then gone somewhere even worse. The question was no longer whether humans had built it. The question was why. Some believed it had been a survival experiment, a way to understand the most hostile environments in the galaxy. Others suspected military intent, a hidden attempt to create a vessel that could operate where no enemy could follow. A few historians proposed a darker theory, that humanity had known something the rest of the galaxy did not, that there were threats beyond known space, and this ship was designed to face them. Debate turned into argument as governments tried to decide how to respond. Sending a fleet closer was risky. Ignoring the vessel felt worse. Every scan confirmed the same unsettling detail. The ship was not damaged beyond function. It was intact, dormant, but ready. Meanwhile, ancient human cultural records were being translated and shared among researchers. Old phrases once treated as metaphors took on new meaning. Humans spoke often of forging strength through pressure and learning from pain. These ideas were philosophical to most species, but humans had a habit of turning philosophy into engineering. Where others saw limits, humans saw challenges. One recovered log fragment, long dismissed as fiction, described a mission where a human crew volunteered to take a ship into a world classified as unsafe. The goal was simple. If the ship failed, they would learn why. If it survived, they would learn how. No rescue was planned. No return was expected. At the time, the story was considered propaganda or madness. Now it sounded like a blueprint. As panic spread, some civilizations demanded that humanity explain themselves. Diplomatic channels were opened, but the response was slow. Modern human governments appeared just as surprised as everyone else. Many of their own archives had been sealed, fragmented, or lost through centuries of political change. Humanity, it seemed, had forgotten parts of its own past. That, more than anything, frightened the galaxy. If even humans did not fully remember what they had built, what else might be waiting in the dark? The vessel remained silent, drifting with quiet confidence. It did not react to scanning beams or communication attempts. It did not acknowledge the fleets watching from a distance. Its stillness felt intentional, like a hunter resting, not asleep but aware. Then, a new detail emerged. Deep within the vessel, power readings suggested systems that had never shut down completely. They had been running at minimal levels for centuries, maintaining structural integrity and internal balance. This was not a dead ship. It was a patient one. Analysts compared it to ancient human survival techniques. Stories of humans entering frozen states, preserving energy, waiting out impossible conditions. The ship mirrored that mindset perfectly. It was not designed to win quickly. It was designed to last. As days passed, the narrative changed again. Fear of attack slowly gave way to fear of meaning. If this ship was not here to fight, then why had it appeared now? Some theorized that its arrival was triggered by technological thresholds. Perhaps the galaxy had finally advanced enough to notice it, or perhaps something else had awakened it. One chilling idea spread through intelligence circles. The ship was not lost. It was deployed, left behind as a marker, a test, or a warning. Humanity had claimed it long ago, confident that one day others would find it and understand what it represented. The longer it remained, the clearer the message became. Humans had not vanished from dangerous places because they could not survive them. They had gone there because they could. And while the galaxy expanded carefully, avoiding the worst regions of space, humanity had been learning in silence. By the end of the second cycle, no one was asking whether the ship would attack. They were asking something far more disturbing. If this was only one vessel, built long ago, what else had humans created and then left behind? And if this ship had returned on its own terms, then whatever shaped it in those Deathworld conditions might not be finished yet. Asterisk. The moment the vessel finally powered up, the galaxy realized how wrong it had been to assume anything about it. For centuries, civilizations had feared Class-15 Deathworld ships because they represented unstoppable forces of nature, engineered to endure environments that could crush entire fleets. Yet nothing could have prepared anyone for the quiet, deliberate activation of a human-built Class-15 vessel. It didn't flare with energy, it didn't fire weapons, and it didn't send any aggressive signals. Instead, it seemed to awaken with absolute control. Systems coming online in perfect synchronization, like a carefully timed orchestra of technology designed to survive and dominate without chaos. It was as if the vessel itself had been thinking while it drifted, waiting for the moment when someone or something would finally take notice. The first systems to come online were internal, life support, structural stabilizers, and the hidden adaptive shield layers. Then came propulsion diagnostics and sensor sweeps. Everything moved smoothly, silently, with an efficiency that made the fleets observing it hesitate. No alarms, no sudden bursts of energy, no warning flashes, just the calm confidence of something that knew its own power. Analysts staring at the readouts were both awed and terrified. To have this level of precision after centuries of drifting in hostile space was almost unimaginable. The vessel was not damaged, not weakened, not lost. It was fully functional, and it had been for a very long time. Then came the first outward indication that the ship knew it was being watched. Its defensive arrays, long dormant, began scanning the nearby fleets, but it was not targeting them aggressively. The arrays swept methodically, assessing threat levels, marking positions, and analyzing the technology of the observers. Every movement was deliberate, almost instructional. It was as if the vessel was saying, "I see you, I understand you, I know who you are, and you should know who I am." The message was unmistakable. Even without words, humans had designed something that survived the worst the galaxy could throw at it, and it was fully aware of everything around it. Then came the first transmission. It was neither threatening nor friendly, yet it carried an undeniable authority. The message referenced treaties and claims older than most civilizations had records for. The vessel stated, simply and clearly, that it and the surrounding territory were under human jurisdiction. It was not asking for recognition. It was asserting it. Most of the fleets watching had no choice but to verify the claim. They combed through centuries of treaties, legal records, and human history. The archives confirmed what the vessel's transmission stated. Humans had filed the claim long ago, anticipating that the galaxy might one day find the vessel and have to acknowledge its presence. It was a legal assertion and a strategic masterstroke combined. Humanity had planned for this moment. Centuries before anyone even imagined they could, diplomatic envoys scrambled to respond, but their words seemed almost trivial in comparison to the vessel itself. Every message sent was polite but measured. Every attempt to communicate was met with silence or minimal acknowledgement. The ship didn't need conversation. It was a statement. The calm, methodical way it had powered up, activated defenses, and transmitted its claim demonstrated an intelligence far beyond what any observer expected. This was not a lost relic, a ghost ship, or a forgotten experiment. This was a sentient testament to human adaptability, foresight, and endurance. The realization hit the galaxy in waves. Humans had not simply survived. They had planned survival on a level no one else had considered. Meanwhile, on board the observation stations, analysts raced to understand what the vessel's capabilities implied. Its adaptive shields could withstand energy outputs far beyond anything contemporary fleets could deliver. Its structural integrity suggested that even prolonged exposure to extreme environmental hazards like those found on Class-15 worlds would not compromise it. Weapons systems were minimal and precise, designed for efficiency and tactical advantage rather than overwhelming destruction. Every element of the ship was a reflection of human philosophy: survive, adapt, endure, and assert dominance without reckless waste. It was terrifying to realize that humanity had built a vessel that could return from the most hostile locations in the galaxy, entirely intact. Centuries after it had been abandoned, the fleet commander struggled to comprehend the implications. How many such ships had humans built and left hidden, each one patiently waiting for its time? Could humanity have already deployed others in secret, observing distant regions while the rest of the galaxy assumed they were absent? The activation of this single vessel raised questions that had no easy answers. It was not just a technological marvel, it was a psychological one. The calmness of its operation suggested strategic patience on a scale that most civilizations were unprepared to handle. This ship had endured centuries of isolation, survived hostile conditions, and returned with its mission intact. Its mere presence forced every nearby government to rethink everything they believed about humans. And then came the undeniable, chilling truth. The vessel was fully self. It had not been dormant or inert. Its systems had been monitoring and maintaining themselves, learning from environmental data, adjusting to minor damages, and preparing for the moment it might need to assert itself. The ship's design was so resilient and intelligent that it could have survived indefinitely, learning and evolving without any human input. It was as if the vessel itself carried the essence of its creators, their ingenuity, persistence, and foresight embodied in a machine built to endure the worst the universe could offer. Observers began to realize that it was not only a tool or a weapon, it was a living representation of human determination. Despite the vessel's calm behavior kept tension high. Every fleet maintained maximum distance, unsure if any sudden movement would trigger aggression. Diplomatic channels were filled with messages, reports, and historical analysis. But nothing human could say or do could change the simple, undeniable fact. This was humanity's ship, built for survival, powered for centuries, and fully capable of defending itself if provoked. The sheer confidence of the vessel was a statement in itself. It did not need to speak loudly or move aggressively. Its presence was enough to alter strategies, challenge assumptions, and demand recognition. Over time, the galaxy began to understand that this activation was not random. The vessel had chosen its moment. It had been dormant, patient, observing from the edge of space, until the right conditions, technological, political, or simply the act of discovery, prompted its awakening. Humans had designed it to wait, to endure, to assert authority not through immediate aggression but through calculated, unyielding presence. This single action forced every civilization to recognize a new reality. Humans were not just survivors. They were patient planners, capable of thinking across centuries and preparing for moments far beyond the immediate horizon. As the first transmission settled into archives, fleets slowly began to recalibrate. The fear of attack was replaced with a deeper, more cautious respect. Humanity had returned, not as conquerors, but as masters of endurance. This single ship, fully powered and awake after centuries, represented the cumulative wisdom and resilience of an entire species. The galaxy was left to wonder if this one vessel was capable of such control and foresight. What else might humanity have hidden away, waiting for the moment to remind the universe who they were? The activation of the vessel was more than a technical marvel. It was a statement of identity, patience, and long-term vision. Every observation, every calculation, every cautious maneuver by other fleets reinforced the same undeniable truth. Humans had returned from the edge of extinction to assert not just survival but authority, and the galaxy for the first time in centuries could see what that truly meant. The logs recovered from the vessel and fragments of old human archives finally began to tell the story of what had really happened. The first shock came from understanding why the ship had been sent to the Class-15 environment in the first place. It was never meant to fail. The mission wasn't an accident, and it certainly wasn't a punishment. Humanity had chosen to send this vessel into the most hostile environment imaginable on purpose. The crew, the engineers, and the designers all knew the risks, but they also understood the potential rewards. They were testing survival itself, taking the limits of technology and human resilience and pushing them to the breaking point. And in that danger, the vessel had learned to adapt. It wasn't just a ship. It was an experiment in endurance, a laboratory for testing the boundaries of life and machinery under extreme conditions. Every panel of armor, every layer of shielding, every redundant system was designed to fail and then recover. Humanity had known that ordinary designs would collapse under the crushing gravity, the corrosive atmosphere, the violent storms, and the unpredictable tectonic activity of a Class-15 world. So they built something that did more than survive. They built a vessel that could grow stronger because of the damage it encountered. The crew's role in this was not to operate the ship in the traditional sense. They were not meant to pilot it through a normal mission, nor to engage in combat. Their purpose was to endure, to adapt, and to record every challenge the environment threw at them. Every adjustment they made, every repair performed under impossible conditions, became a permanent part of the ship's systems. The vessel itself learned from them, incorporating human ingenuity into its very design. As time passed, the crew became more than just survivors. They became teachers, imprinting the lessons of endurance onto a machine they had brought with them. The more historians and analysts studied the logs, the clearer it became that the ship had evolved. Each adaptation it made was more than technical, it was strategic. When it encountered pressure beyond its capacity, it didn't just compensate, it modified itself for the future. When corrosive chemicals threatened its hull, the vessel rewrote the composition of protective layers so similar conditions would never be as dangerous again. Every challenge left a mark, and every mark was a preparation for the next trial. What the galaxy had assumed was a derelict or a lost relic was in fact a living record of human resilience encoded in metal, plasma, and energy systems. The scale of this patience stunned observers. The ship had been drifting, surviving, adapting for centuries in the worst parts of space, far beyond the reaches of friendly civilization. No repairs, no reinforcements, no resupplies, just a vessel continually learning and improving itself, guided by the principles instilled by its human crew. For most species, the idea of leaving a vessel alone in the deadliest environments for hundreds of years seemed insane. For humans, it had been calculated, intentional, and precise. That galaxy began to understand that humanity did not simply build machines to accomplish tasks. They built machines to endure challenges no one else would even attempt. When analysts compared the vessel to modern ships, the difference was staggering. While other civilizations relied on constant maintenance, supply chains, and careful avoidance of extreme conditions, this ship thrived precisely in those conditions. Other ships might break under one storm, one corrosive blast, or one high-gravity impact. The human vessel not only survived all of that, it integrated every experience into a stronger system. Humanity had taken what the galaxy feared and made it their strength. Another revelation from the logs was even more unsettling. The ship had not been idle while drifting. Sensors recorded phenomena across vast distances, monitoring potential threats, mapping hazards, and cataloging environmental extremes. The vessel had been exploring, testing, and preparing for the day it might return to civilization. It had not been lost or forgotten. It had been waiting, silently observing the growth of galactic powers while humans strengthened themselves through harsh experience. Even the way it had returned now made sense. This vessel did not come back because it needed rescue. It came back because the galaxy had reached a point where it was necessary to remind everyone of what humanity was capable of. The transmission it had sent was not a threat. It was a declaration. Humans were survivors, strategists, and patient planners. They did not need to conquer to be respected. They endured where others could not. The ship's return was as much a lesson as it was an announcement. Diplomats and fleet commanders struggled to reconcile this revelation with centuries of human history. They had always underestimated humanity's capacity for long-term strategy, for enduring extreme risk, for taking survival itself and turning it into a weapon. This vessel showed that humans did not act out of fear, desperation, or even ambition. They acted out of calculated foresight. The galaxy had assumed that humans would vanish under extreme conditions. Instead, they had used those conditions to grow stronger, to prepare, and to demonstrate that survival could be more than just living it, could be a statement of power. As more logs were recovered, it became clear that this mission was not a singular event. Humans had conducted multiple operations like this in their early expansion years, some of which were deliberately hidden from history. The Class-15 vessel was simply the most successful, the most extreme example. Others had been lost, yes, but their lessons had been recorded in ways the galaxy had never discovered, waiting for centuries to be revealed. Humanity's approach to survival was systemic, patient, and long-term in ways that no other civilization could match. One of the most impressive aspects of the vessel was how it reflected human philosophy in practical engineering. Where most species viewed danger as something to avoid, humans had treated danger as a teacher. The logs detailed decisions where the crew deliberately exposed the ship to hazards just to see how it would respond. Each failure was expected, and each recovery was incorporated into the vessel's design. Other civilizations might have called this reckless. Humans called it education, and the ship itself became the culmination of centuries of learning. That it also became evident that the vessel was not just reactive, it was proactive. The adaptive systems designed to repair and reinforce itself were sophisticated enough to predict potential failures, preemptively strengthening areas before they could break. This was a ship that had learned not just from its past but from possibilities of the future. A machine that turned experience into foresight. The realization left the galaxy in awe. While most species reacted to events as they happened, humanity had created a system that could anticipate, endure, and excel under conditions that no one else dared confront. The culmination of these revelations transformed fear into a profound respect. Fleet commanders and diplomats realized that any confrontation with humanity could not be approached as a simple military engagement. Humans had survived what no one else could, and they had done so on their own terms. The Class-15 vessel was living proof that humans had mastered the art of survival at a scale far beyond anyone else. Its return was not aggression, it was a quiet, undeniable lesson in patience, endurance, and strategy. By the time the vessel had fully revealed its systems and intentions, the galaxy had begun to understand something deeper. Humanity's claim was not about territory. It was not about conquest. It was about demonstrating that they had the knowledge, resilience, and foresight to endure environments, circumstances, and threats that others could not even imagine. The Class-15 vessel once thought to be a lost relic, had become a symbol. Humans survived not by chance or brute force, but by turning the impossible into a foundation for mastery. The return of the vessel marked a turning point. Civilians, scholars, and military leaders alike realized that humanity's reputation had always been underestimated. While other species prepared for conventional threats, humans had prepared for the unimaginable. And now, after centuries of patient endurance, the galaxy could see the results. The ship was proof of a philosophy that valued adaptation, long-term strategy, and the relentless pursuit of survival under the harshest conditions. No one could ignore it. No one could dismiss it. The Class-15 vessel, built, tested, and perfected under conditions that would have destroyed every other ship, had returned as a living testament to human resilience. The galaxy began to grasp that survival was not enough for humanity. They had taken survival and made it a statement, a challenge, and a warning that some species could endure, adapt, and prepare in ways no one else could imagine. And so, while the ship drifted silently in the neutral system, its presence became a quiet revolution in understanding. Humans had endured the impossible, and they had done it deliberately. The galaxy, which had once assumed that humans were reckless and limited, was forced to accept a new truth. Humanity's strength was not in numbers or weapons alone. It was in patience, foresight, and the ability to thrive where others could not. The vessel had returned to remind everyone that some lessons, learned through centuries of survival, could never be forgotten. By the time the vessel had fully demonstrated its capabilities, the galaxy began to feel a quiet, unsettling shift. It was not an invasion, nor was it a direct threat. There were no lasers firing, no fleets clashing, no diplomatic ultimatums being demanded. Yet, despite this calm, every civilization present felt the weight of what had occurred. The Class-15 vessel was more than just a human ship. It was a reminder, a statement, a lesson delivered without aggression but impossible to ignore. It was humanity showing the universe that they had endured the impossible, and they had done so silently, deliberately, and with unmatched precision. Observing fleets maintained their distance, unsure whether any sudden movement might trigger the vessel's defenses. But over time, an understanding began to emerge. This ship was not here to attack. Its weapons, systems, fully operational, were pointed nowhere. Its shields and propulsion were ready, yet it drifted with an almost casual awareness, surveying the surroundings without hostility. Every move of the vessel seemed to communicate something profound. Humanity was not here to dominate by force. They were here to show that they could, if necessary, and that alone was enough to command respect. As the days passed, diplomatic channels filled with communications, envoys and ambassadors worked tirelessly, sending messages to the vessel and to human representatives who had only recently recovered knowledge of the ship's location. Each exchange reinforced the same lesson. Humanity's return was not about war. It was about recognition of capability. The vessel itself had returned on its own terms, carrying the silent authority of centuries of preparation. For the first time in modern galactic history, civilizations were forced to reconsider what it meant to be strong. Strength was no longer just about fleets, weapons, or territory. Strength could be patience, endurance, and the ability to survive conditions so extreme that no one else dared even attempt them. Historians, scientists, and strategists pored over the recovered logs and archival data. They began to understand the full scope of the vessel's journey. It had been a human creation, deliberately sent into the deadliest known conditions in the galaxy to test not only the limits of technology but also the limits of human resilience. The crew, now long gone, had imprinted their lessons onto the ship. Every repair, every adaptation, every innovation in response to extreme environments had become part of the vessel's structure. What the galaxy was now witnessing was the culmination of centuries of human ingenuity and patient survival. The ship was alive in a sense, not biologically, but as a record of human determination, endurance, and foresight. Analysts realized that humanity had never truly left the galaxy's consciousness. Even during centuries of quiet, while empires rose and fell and species assumed dominance, humans had been learning, adapting, and preparing. The vessel's reappearance proved that they had not relied on brute force alone. They had relied on something far more enduring: adaptability. The lessons learned on Deathworlds, places no other species could survive, had shaped a ship hand by extension, a people capable of confronting challenges the galaxy had not even imagined. For many, this revelation was almost too much to comprehend. Fleet commanders began reassessing their strategies. If one vessel, built centuries ago and surviving the deadliest conditions imaginable, could exist quietly at the edges of space, how many other assets had humanity deployed in secrecy? Could there be other ships, other experiments, other lessons waiting silently in dangerous sectors? The presence of this single vessel changed the calculus of every interstellar engagement. The galaxy realized that it had underestimated humans, not in arrogance or fear, but in simple assumption. Humans were capable of patience, planning, and long-term survival in ways no other species had achieved. The human claim to the vessel and the surrounding territory added another layer of complexity. Centuries-old legal records confirmed the right of ownership. Every fleet, every government, every diplomat had to accept it, not because humanity demanded it now, but because it had been claimed long ago. The Class-15 vessel was proof that humans had anticipated discovery, had prepared for acknowledgement, and had secured their place in the galaxy not by force but by foresight. This legal claim, combined with the ship's silent authority, created a new kind of power, one that was undeniable yet subtle, respected yet quietly intimidating. The galaxy also began to grasp the philosophical implications. Humanity's approach was fundamentally different from any other species' understanding of strength. Most civilizations focused on conquest, expansion, or accumulation of resources. Humans had focused on survival, adaptation, and learning from the harshest environments imaginable. The vessel represented not destruction, but mastery of endurance. By surviving what no one else could, humans had created a position of influence that required no aggressive action. The galaxy's powers began to see that patience, planning, and the courage to confront impossible odds could be just as powerful as fleets and weapons. As the vessel eventually prepared to depart, observers noted the calm certainty with which it moved. There was no farewell message, no display of triumph. Its systems powered down in stages, shields and sensors gradually reducing output, as if reminding everyone watching that the demonstration was complete. The vessel did not vanish in haste. It did not leave in fear or retreat. It departed deliberately, leaving only the lesson behind. Humans survive, adapt, and endure. They do not need to announce themselves with aggression. Their presence alone is enough to alter the galaxy's understanding of power in the aftermath. Governments, historians, and strategists began to discuss humanity in new terms. The old assumptions that humans were reckless, limited, or vulnerable were discarded. Humanity's strength was no longer measured in fleets, colonies, or technology alone. It was measured in patience, foresight, and the capacity to endure the impossible. The appearance of the Class-15 vessel had changed galactic perceptions forever. Civilizations that once considered humans a minor power now understood that underestimating them could be catastrophic. The vessel's journey also sparked a broader recognition. Survival itself could be a form of power. The galaxy realized that the ability to endure, adapt, and wait could surpass the capabilities of even the largest fleets. Humans had embodied this principle centuries ago, and their vessel had become the ultimate proof. It was a quiet revolution in thinking, one that reshaped how civilizations approached strategy, exploration, and risk. Strength was no longer just offensive or defensive, it could be measured by the ability to persist where others failed. The return of the vessel also reminded the galaxy of a hard truth. Some legacies do not vanish. Humans had claimed the ship long ago, survived conditions no one else could, and returned not to dominate, but to demonstrate mastery. Their approach to survival, encoded in technology and reinforced through centuries of patience, had changed the rules of engagement for every civilization that witnessed it. The lesson was clear. Humanity would not be underestimated, ignored, or dismissed. By the end of the encounter, the galaxy had accepted a new reality. Humanity had not been absent. It had been observing, learning, and preparing. The Class-15 vessel was more than a ship. It was a testament to human endurance, a symbol of patient power, and a message that true strength was built over time, through adversity, and with foresight that spanned centuries. Every civilization that observed it, every fleet that had scanned its hull, and every historian that studied its logs understood the same undeniable truth. Humanity had returned, not through conquest, but through endurance, and that was a power no one could ignore. The vessel's departure left the galaxy changed. Peace had not been enforced through aggression, but through the quiet, undeniable proof of capability. Humanity had shown that it could survive what no one else could, claim what no one else could, and return when it chose. The galaxy now understood that true influence did not require violence. It could be earned through patience, foresight, and the unyielding capacity to endure. And in that moment, the legacy of humanity became clear. They had claimed survival itself as their territory, and the universe would never look at them the same way again.